Hey everyone, it's Hannah here, and oh my goodness, do I have such an exciting and honestly pretty stressful story to share with you today. So, a few months after moving to America, I had to fly domestically for the very first time, meaning I was taking a flight within the United States from one American city to another. And let me tell you, navigating an American airport completely on my own was one of the most overwhelming experiences I've had since moving here. I couldn't understand half the signs. I had no idea what TSA meant. I almost missed my flight because I didn't know the difference between a gate and a terminal. And I stood in the completely wrong line for about 20 minutes before someone kindly pointed me in the right direction. But by the time I finally collapsed into my airplane seat, I had picked up so much vocabulary about airports and air travel in America that you are absolutely going to need if you ever fly here. So, whether you're planning your first domestic flight or you just want to understand all that confusing airport vocabulary, buckle up because this story is packed with everything you need to know. Let's get into it. Okay, so here is how this whole adventure started. About 4 months after arriving in America, my company asked me to travel to Chicago for a 3-day work conference. A conference is a professional gathering where people from the same industry come together to share ideas, attend presentations, and network, which means meeting and building relationships with other professionals in your field. I'd be flying from my city to Chicago and back, which meant I needed to navigate an American airport twice, both coming and going. I was honestly pretty nervous because even though I'd flown internationally to get to America in the first place, domestic flights have a slightly different process, and I wasn't totally sure what to expect. My manager noticed I looked a little anxious and said, "Don't stress. Just make sure you get to the airport at least 2 hours before your departure time." Departure time is the scheduled time your flight is supposed to leave. That was helpful advice. So I planned to arrive 2 full hours early, just to give myself plenty of time to figure everything out without panicking. The night before my flight, I spent some time doing research online so I wouldn't be completely lost when I got there. I found out that the airport I'd be flying out of was called a commercial airport, which is the standard type of airport that regular passengers use for everyday travel, as opposed to private airports that are only for small private planes. I also learned that large airports are often divided into sections called terminals. A terminal is a large building within the airport complex where passengers check in, go through security, and board their flights. Big airports like JFK in New York, O'Hare in Chicago, and LAX in Los Angeles have multiple terminals, sometimes labeled with numbers like Terminal 1, Terminal 2, or letters like Terminal A, Terminal B. Different airlines often operate out of different terminals. So the first thing you need to know when you arrive at a large airport is which terminal your airline is in. My flight was on United Airlines, so I needed to find the United Airlines terminal specifically. I wrote all of this down in my phone notes so I wouldn't forget. The morning of my flight, I woke up super early, double-checked that I had everything packed in my carry-on bag and my checked bag. These are two very important terms to understand about air travel in America. A carry-on bag is a smaller bag or suitcase that you bring with you onto the airplane and store in the overhead compartment above your seat or under the seat in front of you. Most airlines allow one carry-on bag and one smaller personal item, like a purse, laptop bag, or backpack per passenger. There are size restrictions for carry-on bags, meaning your bag has to fit within certain dimensions, or the airline won't let you bring it on the plane. A checked bag, on the other hand, is a larger suitcase that you give to the airline at check-in, and they load into the cargo hold underneath the airplane. You don't see it again until you arrive at your destination and pick it up at the baggage claim area. Most domestic airlines charge an extra fee for checked bags, somewhere between $30 and $40 per bag each way. So, a lot of American travelers try to pack everything into a carry on to avoid paying that extra cost. I had one of each since I was going for 3 days and needed enough clothes. I grabbed an Uber to the airport and arrived about 2 hours before my scheduled departure time, just like my manager suggested. Walking through the automatic sliding doors of the airport, the first thing I encountered was this massive open area with tons of counters lining both sides. Each counter had signs overhead showing different airline names like Delta, American Airlines, Southwest, United, and so on. This main area is called the Departures Hall or check-in area, and this is where your airport journey officially begins. I found the United Airlines counter and walked up, but then I saw 2 different line options and wasn't sure which one to stand in. One line led to actual human employees standing behind the counter, and the other line led to these self-service machines. The self-service machines are called self-check-in kiosks, and they're touchscreen computers where you can check yourself in for your flight, choose or confirm your seat, print your boarding pass, and even pay for and tag your checked bags, all without talking to a person. I'd actually already done online check-in the night before, which means I'd gone to the United Airlines website and checked in for my flight from my laptop at home, so technically I already had my boarding pass saved on my phone. Online check-in usually opens 24 hours before your departure time and is definitely the most convenient option since you can do it from your couch. Since I'd already checked in online and only had one checked bag to drop off, an airline employee directed me to a shorter line called Bag Drop. Bag Drop is exactly what it sounds like. It's a designated counter where passengers who've already checked in online can quickly hand over their checked luggage without going through the full check-in process again. This saves a lot of time compared to standing in the full check-in line. The employee at the bag drop counter asked to see my ID and my boarding pass. A boarding pass is the document, either printed on paper or shown digitally on your phone screen, that gives you permission to board your specific flight. It has your name, your flight number, your departure city and destination city, your departure time, your seat number, and crucially, your gate number. A gate is the specific door or exit point in the airport terminal from which you actually walk onto the airplane. After she verified my ID and scanned my boarding pass, she attached a luggage tag to my suitcase handle. A luggage tag is a paper label with a barcode that gets attached to your checked bag and contains information about your destination, so the airline knows which airplane to load it onto. She then lifted my bag and placed it on a conveyor belt that disappeared through a flap in the wall, carrying my suitcase away to eventually be loaded onto my plane. She handed me a baggage claim ticket, which is a small receipt with a tracking barcode that proves the bag belongs to you, and told me I could track my bag using the United Airlines app if I wanted to see where it was at any point. With my checked bag handed off, I now needed to go through security, which is honestly the most stressful part of the airport experience for most people, especially first-timers. The security checkpoint is managed by an organization called the TSA, which stands for Transportation Security Administration. The TSA is a U.S. government agency responsible for making sure no dangerous items get onto airplanes. They screen every single passenger and every single bag that goes through the airport. I'd heard of TSA before, but never really understood exactly what happened at a TSA checkpoint, so I paid close attention to what the people ahead of me were doing. so I could copy them and not hold up the line. First, I had to show my ID and boarding pass to a TSA officer, who is an official government employee wearing a uniform. After they verified my documents, I entered the actual screening area where my belongings would be scanned through an X-ray machine. An X-ray machine uses special electromagnetic radiation to see through bags and luggage, so security officers can see if there's anything dangerous hidden inside without opening every single bag. Before putting my stuff through the X-ray, I had to follow several important rules that I learned by watching others and reading the signs posted everywhere. First, I had to remove my laptop from my carry-on bag and place it separately in one of the gray plastic bins, which are the flat containers that go through the X-ray machine. Laptops have to come out of bags because their dense electronics can obscure other items in X-ray images and make it hard to see what else is in the bag. Second, I had to take off my shoes and place them in a bin separately. This is a security rule that's pretty unique to America that confuses and surprises a lot of international travelers. After a security incident many years ago, American airports started requiring passengers to remove their shoes at security checkpoints. Third, I had to remove everything from my pockets, including my phone, wallet, keys, and coins, and place them in a bin. And fourth, there are very strict rules about liquids in your carry-on bag. The TSA has what's called the 3-1-1 rule for liquids. This means all liquids, gels, aerosols, creams, and pastes in your carry-on must be in containers of 3.4 ounces or less. All those containers must fit into one clear quart-size Ziploc plastic bag, and each passenger is allowed only one of those clear bags. Things like water bottles, large shampoo bottles, or full-size toothpaste tubes are not allowed through security in your carry-on because they exceed the liquid limit. Any liquids that are too large get confiscated, which means taken away by security officers. After sending my bins through the X-ray machine on the conveyor belt, I walked through what's called a body scanner, which is a large booth-like machine that you stand inside for a couple of seconds with your arms raised. The body scanner checks for anything concealed on your person that wouldn't show up just from looking at you. Sometimes the machine flags something and a TSA officer will do a pat-down, which means they use their hands to physically check specific areas of your body where the scanner detected something unusual. This can feel a little uncomfortable and awkward if it happens to you, but it's completely standard procedure, and the officers are always professional about it. Fortunately, my scanner was clear and I walked right through without any issues. I collected all my belongings from the bins on the other side of the X-ray, repacked my carry-on, put my shoes back on, and felt genuinely relieved that I'd made it through security without any major problems. Now I was in what's called the secure area, or air side of the airport, which is the section of the airport that only ticketed passengers who've been through security can access. This is where all the gates are located, along with shops, restaurants, and other passenger amenities. I looked up at the large digital departures board, which is a screen or series of screens displaying all departing flights, their scheduled departure times, their gate numbers, and their current status. Flight status options include on time, meaning the flight is departing as scheduled; delayed, meaning the flight is running behind schedule and will leave later than planned; boarding, meaning passengers are currently being allowed onto the plane; and canceled, which is the absolute worst status to see, because it means your flight isn't happening at all and you need to rebook. My flight showed as on time, which was a huge relief, and my gate was listed as gate B14. Now I needed to find gate B14, which meant I needed to figure out how to get to the B concourse. A concourse is a long hallway or corridor within a terminal that has multiple gates branching off it, all labeled with the same letter prefix. I followed the overhead signs pointing toward Concourse B, walking past gate after gate labeled B1, B2, B3, and so on. Along the way, I passed several restaurants, coffee shops, newsstands, and souvenir stores. There was also a duty-free shop, which is a store that sells luxury goods like perfume, alcohol, and designer items without including certain taxes, making them cheaper than regular stores. Duty-free shops are more common in international terminals, though, so this was a small one. I also passed a charging station, which is an area with electrical outlets and USB ports built into the seating where passengers can charge their phones and devices while waiting for their flights. I plugged my phone in for a few minutes since the battery was running a little low, and I was really glad I noticed it because having a dead phone in an airport would have been a nightmare. I finally found gate B14 and settled into a seat in the gate area, which is the waiting area immediately surrounding the specific door where your flight will board. The gate area had rows of connected chairs, large windows looking out onto the tarmac, which is the paved area outside where airplanes park and taxi around, and a counter with airline employees called gate agents. Gate agents are airline employees stationed specifically at the gate who manage the boarding process, make announcements about the flight, handle passenger questions and problems, and scan boarding passes as people get on the plane. I could see my actual airplane parked right outside the window connected to a long enclosed walkway called a jet bridge or jetway. A jet bridge is that enclosed, movable tunnel that connects the airport gate door to the airplane door, allowing passengers to walk directly from the terminal onto the plane without going outside and being exposed to weather. While waiting, I noticed the gate agent making announcements over the loudspeaker and learned some really important airport vocabulary from listening carefully. She announced that the flight would begin pre-boarding shortly. Pre-boarding means allowing certain passengers to board the plane before general boarding begins. People who get to pre-board include passengers with disabilities or mobility issues, families with very young children, and passengers who've paid for premium seats or have elite status with the airline's frequent flyer program. A frequent flyer program, also called a loyalty program or rewards program, is a membership where you earn miles or points every time you fly with a specific airline. The more you fly, the more miles you accumulate, and you can eventually redeem those miles for free flights, seat upgrades, or other travel perks. Airlines like United, Delta, and American Airlines all have their own frequent flyer programs with different names, like United's Mileage Plus or Delta's Sky Miles. After pre-boarding, the gate agent announced that boarding would happen in group order. Most American airlines divide passengers into numbered boarding groups, usually 1 through 5 or 1 through 8, depending on the airline. Group 1 boards first and typically includes first-class passengers and elite frequent flyers. Later groups board after. Your boarding group number is printed right on your boarding pass. I was in Group 4, which meant I had to wait, while 3 groups of people boarded ahead of me. I made a mental note that next time I should check in online exactly when the check-in window opens 24 hours before my flight, because passengers who check in earlier generally get assigned to earlier boarding groups, which means you get onto the plane sooner and have better access to overhead bin space for your carry-on. When my group was finally called, I walked up to the gate agent. She scanned the barcode on my phone screen. It made a happy beeping sound, and she said, "Welcome aboard," which is a warm greeting that airline staff use to welcome passengers onto the plane. I walked down the jet bridge and stepped onto the airplane, and an enthusiastic flight attendant greeted me at the door with a smile and said, "Welcome. Your seat is toward the back on the right side." Flight attendants, sometimes still called stewards or stewardesses, though those terms are older and less common now, are the airline employees who work on board the aircraft during the flight. Their primary responsibility is passenger safety, but they also provide in-flight service like distributing drinks and snacks, answering questions, and making sure everyone follows the safety rules during the flight. I found my seat, loaded my carry-on into the overhead bin, which is the storage compartment above the seats that opens and closes with a latch, and settled in. The seat next to me had a tray table folded into the seat back in front of it, which is the small fold-down surface you can use as a table during the flight for your drink or laptop. I also noticed the seat pocket in the seat back directly in front of me, which is a mesh or fabric pouch where airlines store the safety information card, which is a laminated card with illustrated instructions about what to do in various emergency situations, along with the in-flight magazine and sometimes an airsick bag. Before the plane could take off, the flight attendants did a safety demonstration, which is a required presentation showing passengers all the safety features of the aircraft. They showed how to fasten and unfasten the seatbelt, which you're required to wear whenever the seatbelt sign is illuminated, meaning the little light above you showing a seatbelt symbol is turned on. They pointed out the emergency exits, which are the doors around the plane that can be opened in case of an emergency to evacuate passengers. They showed the oxygen masks that drop from compartments above your head if the plane loses cabin pressure at high altitude. And they demonstrated the life vest stored under your seat for use in the extremely unlikely event of a water landing. Most experienced American travelers honestly don't pay much attention to the safety demonstration because they've seen it dozens of times, but as a first-timer, I found it really informative and was glad I watched carefully. The plane pushed back from the gate and taxied to the runway. Taxiing means the plane is moving slowly on the ground under its own power before taking off. We lined up on the runway, which is the long paved strip that airplanes use for taking off and landing, and then the engines roared loudly and we accelerated and took off, which means the plane lifted off the ground and became airborne. Once we reached our cruising altitude, which is the standard flying height maintained during the main portion of the flight, the flight attendant came around with the beverage cart, which is a rolling metal cart they push down the narrow aisle between seats loaded with drinks and snacks. She asked, "What can I get you to drink?" And I asked for just water, please. On most domestic flights in America, non-alcoholic beverages like water, juice, soda, and coffee are complimentary, meaning they're included in your ticket price at no extra charge. Alcoholic drinks like beer and wine typically cost extra money. The flight to Chicago was about 2.5 hours, and before I knew it, the pilot announced we were beginning our descent, which means the plane was starting to gradually fly lower in preparation for landing. He said we'd be landing at O'Hare International Airport shortly and asked everyone to return to their seats, fasten their seatbelts, and ensure their tray tables were folded up and their seat backs were returned to the full upright position. The landing was smooth. The plane touched down on the runway with a gentle bump, and everyone applauded, which is something passengers often do on smooth landings in America. It's kind of a fun tradition. We deplaned, which means everyone got off the airplane in an orderly fashion, starting from the front rows, and I followed the crowd through the jet bridge back into the terminal. Now I needed to find my checked bag. and I followed the signs pointing toward baggage claim. Baggage claim is the area of the airport where passengers go after landing to collect their checked luggage. There are large oval or circular conveyor belts called baggage carousels that slowly rotate, carrying suitcases and bags around in a loop so passengers can grab their luggage when they see it come by. Each arriving flight is assigned a specific carousel number, displayed on screens overhead, so you need to find the right carousel for your flight. I found Carousel 7 for my United Airlines flight, stood around it with a bunch of other passengers, and watched the bags start coming out through a flap in the wall and onto the moving belt. After about 10 minutes of anxiously watching every bag that came by, I finally spotted my suitcase, grabbed it off the moving belt, and felt this enormous wave of relief wash over me. My bag had made it. I was officially in Chicago. Looking back on that whole airport experience from start to finish, I genuinely could not believe how much vocabulary I'd picked up in just one travel day. A terminal is the main building where you check in and board flights. A gate is the specific door you board your plane from. A boarding pass is your permission document to get on your flight. Check-in is the process of confirming your presence for the flight. Bag drop is where you hand off your checked luggage quickly. The TSA manages airport security checkpoints. The 311 rule governs liquids in your carry-on. A body scanner checks for concealed items. The departures board shows all flight information and statuses. A concourse is a corridor connecting multiple gates. A jet bridge is the enclosed walkway from gate to plane. Flight attendants ensure safety and comfort on board. Pre-boarding happens before general boarding for priority passengers. A frequent flyer program lets you earn miles for free future flights. Baggage claim is where you collect your checked bags after landing. And a baggage carousel is the rotating belt that brings your luggage around for pickup. These are words and phrases that make navigating any American airport feel genuinely manageable instead of completely terrifying. So that is my complete story about navigating an American airport for the very first time. From almost standing in the wrong line at check-in to surviving the TSA security process with my shoes in a bin, to finally finding my gate and boarding my flight like an actual experienced traveler. It was such a learning experience, and I am genuinely so much more confident about flying now than I was before that trip. If this story helped you understand airport vocabulary better or made you feel less nervous about flying in America, please go ahead and smash that like button right now, because it really helps me out so much. And if you are absolutely loving these daily real-life American vocabulary stories, make sure you subscribe and turn on every single notification so you never miss a new video from me. I drop a brand new story every single day, each one packed with real vocabulary from situations you're actually going to face living in America. Keep learning, stay brave, and remember that every confusing new experience is really just a vocabulary lesson in disguise. I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Take care, everyone.